A hot topic on many families' minds. Grand Rapids consistently ranked among the hottest housing markets in the country, and multiple studies out this year show that the housing market has also seen some of the largest increases in home prices and mortgage payments since 2014. Joining us now here in studio is our senior digital content producer here at Third Channel Your Side, Stephen Bohner. Stephen, you took a really close look at some information that we got and then kind of expanded upon it. It's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of statistics, and you did an excellent job kind of taking a deep dive, as this is something, mortgage payments, house prices, cost of living, it's something, we're all talking about all the time and is of a lot of interest.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about, some of that deep dive you did.
Yeah, so basically we got in our inbox email about a study showing that Grand Rapids had one of the highest increases in mortgage payments in the U.S. Over the last 10 years. And whenever we get studies like that, I always like to look at it and see, okay, how true is this?
Right.
So I went and I've actually found two other studies that essentially corroborated the same evidence. And what it found was pretty crazy, is that average mortgage payment amounts in Grand Rapids rose 238% from 2014 to 2024. That's the fourth largest mortgage payment increase in the U.S. during that time period.
It's a crazy number. And we have some stats that you're going to talk about that we can pull up that'll play just so you can kind of read along with what we're talking about, if we can play that video there, guys.
Yeah, so this 10-year income mortgage change, fourth largest in the U.S. It also looked at the average income, and the income rose only 45%, where the mortgage payments rose an astounding 238%.
Yeah, yeesh.
So essentially, people are only making about 50% more, but houses are like almost 2.5 times more expensive. Right. So when you look at that with also the cost of living that rose during that time, the cost of living rose about 36.5%. So essentially, you're only making another 9% higher income.
Yeah.
This massive home price change. And then I found another study. Here, you're looking at a 10-year Grand Rapids home price changes. Median home prices rose nearly 161% from 2014 to 2024. That's $105,000 on median home price in the market versus $273,000 that we saw last year. Detroit had one of the highest increases in prices, up 200%. But it just goes to show that Michigan was rising about 100%, Grand Rapids and Detroit much more demanding markets. And then I drilled it down even further, and I found a 3-year mortgage change in the metro area of Grand Rapids. Payments rose about $650-ish over the last 3 years. This is the 14th largest increase in the U.S. Median home prices up $48,000 during that time period. So you can see too that during that time period, it rose slowly at first, but just in the last year, last 3 years, it rose another like $48,000 per home. And with people's income levels not rising essentially that quickly, it's forcing people out of the market. We have this housing crisis in Grand Rapids right now. So I just wanted to share my findings with everybody here in West Michigan.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about this all the time. We know the city of Grand Rapids, the state of Michigan as a whole, is constantly working to try and fix this housing crisis. There's not enough housing and there's not enough affordable housing. It's something we talk about all the time. Just yesterday, we had the story about the tiny homes opening up through Mel Trotter, specifically working to help this issue. But I know too that in those numbers you showed off originally, talking about the roughly 240% increase in mortgage payments, that was comparable to Orlando, Vegas, and Tampa.
I know.
Which is crazy when you think about, we're a great city, we're a big city, we have so much going on, but compared to those major cities, to be in that, rough ballpark compared to those is astounding, especially if you're trying to buy a first home or looking to, upscale a little bit your current home.
Right.
I mean, it's just impossible for a lot of families.
It's very hard for a lot of families to get into the housing market right now. But hopefully, there's been a bunch of initiatives at the state level and at the local level to basically increase the amount of housing in the area, so hopefully that reduces some costs. But right now, the way it's showing, it's just not trending to where it's going to be affordable anytime soon.
Right.
And that's kind of a scary thing to think about when you're just starting to start a family, looking for a home and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll have to see.
And something else you kind of wanted to talk about, I'm sure many folks at home, maybe you see, something on Facebook or TikTok, a study with some sort of, crazy number. Wow, look at that. We wanted to talk about, how we are and how you, in this particular instance, really vetted these numbers and this study. We get press releases, up the wazoo with, oh, Michigan's favorite this, or Michigan, is top 10 at that.
Right.
And what's actually factual, how we look at that information. So you were going to talk a little bit about, if you at home see some shocking numbers and you want to know, okay, is that legitimate? You kind of have some tips for folks to approach that.
So basically, if you're trying to vet if a study is actually worth looking at, there's a few questions you need to ask yourself. The first thing I always like to ask is, where is the data coming from? In the studies that we talked about earlier, they're coming from reputable sources like Freddie Mac, the Census Bureau, a little bit less reputable, but Zillow, but it still has a good idea of basic housing value. So you know that those are all kind of reputable. Then I ask myself, is the study's author reputable? In the cases of my studies, I did not know of these authors initially, which is fine, but that gave me a little bit of pause, and that's why I dug in and tried to find corroborating studies. And so another thing, if it's not reputable, a huge thing to look at is the methodology of the study. And the methodology is essentially how they analyze their data, where they're getting their data from, and how they're getting the results from the methodology. If they're doing things like having data points that are like based on feeling or based on like a Google trend or like search results or something, that's not good methodology. Good methodology is actual housing prices, is actual like mortgage payments based on Freddie Mac data. And then the other question I always like to ask, and this is what led me to having those other studies, is are there similar studies with similar results? And with the case of the studies that I found with the Grand Rapids housing market, I quickly found that yes, these are studies that are corroborating the evidence with each other. They're using slightly different data sets, so the numbers might be slightly off, but they're in the ballpark. And so I figured this is good enough to publish because I've found out that these are credible studies. And
that goes back to my point too of, we get a lot of emails from all sorts of different sources saying, this, that, and the other thing about Michigan or Grand Rapids, but we have to take the time before we're telling anyone at home about that information because, if all of those sort of portions of it don't add up, it's not something that we are going to comfortably share with our audience either, which is why you did some deeper diving into this, and then we published that web article. Our Nick Nelson did a story for air on this. So wow, we really appreciate you kind of explaining this, some of the behind the scenes work. Stephen does a lot here at 13 on Your Side with the rundown and all of our web content in a lot of different ways. So thanks so much for joining us, talking about these numbers. Obviously not great news for many at home. Hopefully, a lot of the initiatives that are underway right now across the state and here in the city can work on that, but it's some important information for folks to know. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
it. We are going to take a quick break. Colton